Revolutionary Adventures by Piere Bolonge. Chapter 1. The Rainy Day Discovery. Rain hammered against the windows of the Williams cottage, drumming a relentless rhythm that turned the afternoon sky into a swirling sea of gray. The crackle of the fireplace fought a losing battle against the damp chill that seeped through the old stone walls. Sarah Williams knelt on the living room floor, digging through a dusty, forgotten box of belongings. Her sweater sleeves slipped past her elbows as she pushed aside old photo albums, a cracked snow globe, and a stack of yellowed papers. "Look at this," she exclaimed, her voice cutting through the cozy gloom as she held up a battered board game. The edges of the box were frayed, and its once vibrant illustrations had faded to soft, ghostly hues. Across the top of the lid, ornate gold letters spelled out Revolutionary Adventures, depicting a mob storming a massive stone fortress beneath a tempestuous Parisian sky. Time itself seemed to cling to the box like dust. Tom Williams glanced up from his phone, raising one skeptical eyebrow. "A board game? Since when do we play board games?" "Since it's pouring rain outside and we're stuck in the house," Sarah countered, already peeling back the lid with a childlike excitement. A musty scent of old paper and something less definable, something ancient, wafted out. Their teenage son, Alex, lounged across the couch, his headphones slipping down around his neck. He groaned dramatically, letting his head flop back. History. Can't we just, watch a movie or something?" "Come on, Alex, it'll be fun," Sarah said, giving him a playful nudge. Across the room, Lily, their 10-year-old daughter, bounced on her toes, her wild curls springing with each hop. Her wide, eager eyes locked onto the game board. "I want to play," she squealed. Tom sighed heavily, slipping his phone into his pocket with the air of a man facing a great and terrible sacrifice. "Fine, but if it's boring, I reserve the right to bail out." Sarah grinned triumphantly, unfolding the game board. It revealed a beautifully illustrated map of 18th century Paris, detailed down to the crooked rooftops and twisting alleyways. Intricate wooden figures lay tucked inside. A revolutionary brandishing a fist, a nobleman with a powdered wig, a soldier in a crisp blue uniform, and a peasant clutching a battered scythe. She lifted a pair of unusually heavy dice, running her fingers over their strange, almost metallic surfaces. They shimmered slightly under the flickering light. "It says here that the game offers historical experiences," she read aloud from the faded instruction manual. "You don't just play, you live the revolution." Alex rolled his eyes, slouching deeper into the couch cushions. "Yeah, right." Lily tugged at Tom's sleeve, thrusting the dice into his hand. "Roll first, Dad." Tom shrugged with a smirk and gave the dice a casual toss onto the center of the board. They clattered across the surface, spinning unpredictably before coming to a stop, showing a pair of fives. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The rain battered the windows harder. The fire crackled, throwing distorted shadows across the walls. Then, with a sudden hiss, a strange swirling mist began to rise from the board, coiling around their ankles like living smoke. The room seemed to darken, the light dimming as static crackled in the heavy air. The television screen flickered and went black. "What's happening?" Lily whispered, clutching Sarah's sleeve with a trembling hand. Tom leapt to his feet, his instincts kicking in, but it was too late. The mist thickened into a dense, pulsing fog, swallowing the room whole. One by one, the family disappeared into the mist, and the world they knew, dissolved into darkness. Chapter 2. Into the Mist. A sharp chill sliced through Sarah's skin as she stumbled forward into the void. It was as if the ground had been ripped from beneath her feet, and she was falling, not down, but through something. Around her, echoes of laughter, shouting cries spun in dizzying circles. The mist thickened, dragging at her arms and legs like unseen hands. "Tom? Alex? Lily?" she shouted into the swirling grayness. "I'm here!" Tom's voice came from somewhere nearby, strained with alarm. "Mom, over here," Alex called out, his voice cracking with fear. "I can't see anything," Lily sobbed. Sarah lunged toward the voices, her hands outstretched. Suddenly the mist thinned, snapping away like pulled curtains, and she stumbled onto rough, uneven ground. Around her loomed towering stone buildings, their cracked facades pressing inward like silent watchers. The air reeked of smoke, dampness, and something fouler, rot, perhaps, or despair. Tom landed beside her with a grunt, steadying himself against a grimy wall slick with filth. Alex crashed down next, followed by Lily, who fell to her knees, coughing. "Where the hell are we?" Tom muttered, wiping his hands on his jeans, which were now spattered with mud. Sarah turned slowly, her historian's mind scrambling to process the unfamiliar yet familiar scene. Laundry lines sagged between buildings, heavy with sodden clothes. Rats darted across the cobblestone stones, vanishing into broken gutters. Above the rooftops, a dark plume of smoke spiraled into the overcast sky, and in the distance came the low rumble of an angry crowd. "This," she breathed. "This can't be real." Alex spun in a tight circle, panic rising fast. "Where are we? What happened?" Lily clung to Sarah's waist, her voice trembling. "Mom, are we still in the game?" Before Sarah could answer, a thunderous roar erupted from the far end of the street. A mass of people surged toward them, wild-eyed men and women in ragged clothing, waving pitchforks, muskets, and makeshift weapons above their heads. "The storming of the Bastille," Sarah whispered, her heart thudding in her chest. "July 14th, 1789. We're in the middle of the French Revolution." Tom's eyes widened. "We need to get out of here. Now." He grabbed Lily's hand, but the mob was a living wave, crashing forward with relentless energy. One burly man with soot-smeared cheeks and a broken pitchfork locked eyes with them and charged. At the last second, a hand yanked Sarah backward into a shadowy, "This way?" hissed a young woman in a stained apron. Her voice was sharp, urgent. Without thinking, Sarah grabbed Tom's arm and pulled him after her. Alex and Lily stumbled after them, the mist still clinging faintly to their skin. The woman led them through a twisting maze of alleys, their boots splashing through rancid puddles. Shouts and gunshots echoed behind them, but the alleys absorbed sound like a sponge. Finally, the woman shoved open a sagging door and waved them inside. They tumbled into a dimly lit laundry house, the air thick with the sour scent of lye soap and wet linen. She barred the door behind them and turned, studying the family with wary, intelligent eyes. "Who are you?" Sarah demanded, instinctively shielding Lily with her body. The woman wiped her hands on her apron, smearing dirt into darker streaks. "Marie. And you, because you're clearly not from around here." Tom stepped forward cautiously. "We're travelers," Marie snorted, crossing her arms. "Travelers in those clothes? You might as well be from the moon." At that moment, another figure slipped through the door, a lean young man in a partially torn Royal Guards uniform. His dark hair was cropped close to his head and a jagged scar ran along his jawline. "Look," Marie said, nodding toward him. "Former Royal Guard. Now, considerably less royal." Luck smirked. "Defector," he corrected, his sharp gaze raking over their jeans, sneakers, and modern jackets. "And you're either spies or the worst-dressed nobles I've ever seen." Sarah stepped forward, forcing her voice to stay calm. "We need help. We're trying to find a way home." Marie and Luke exchanged a long, silent glance. Something passed between them, something Sarah couldn't decipher. "Then you'll need to survive the revolution first," Marie said at last, her smile thin and edged with danger. Chapter 3. Paris. Unfolds. The laundry house was a cramped, sagging structure squeezed between two taller, grimier buildings. The air inside was heavy with the scent of damp linen, soap, and old wood. Shadows danced on the walls, thrown by a single stub of candle flickering from a cracked bottle. Luke lit a second candle, the light catching the grim set of his jaw as he paced restlessly near the door. "You're lucky we found you," he muttered, glancing at the barred entrance. "The National Guard is arresting anyone who even smells suspicious, and you lot stick out worse than a peacock in a henhouse." Tom crossed his arms, squinting at Luck. "So what's the plan? Hide here forever?" Marie, perched on an overturned basket, gave a humorless laugh. "You need papers to move freely. Forged ones, and that takes time." Sarah paced across the uneven floorboards, wringing her hands. "Time we don't have. We need to get back somehow." Lily, who had been nervously exploring the shop, tugged on Marie's apron, her voice tiny. "Do you know a watchmaker?" Marie stiffened visibly, exchanging a wary glance with Luck. "Why?" Lily bit her lip. "Before we came here, I saw a picture on the board game, a pocket watch." Luck rubbed his chin, studying Lily with a new kind of seriousness. "There's an old man near the Seine," he said slowly. "They say he talks to shadows. Some think he's a sorcerer, others think he's just mad." "Either way, he's our only lead," Sarah said firmly, feeling a flicker of hope. Before anyone could speak further, a heavy knock rattled the door, followed by a barking command. Open up, by order of the National Assembly. Marie's eyes widened. She snatched up the candle and blew it out, plunging the room into semi-darkness. Out the back now! The family didn't hesitate. They stumbled through a rear door into a narrow alley choked with garbage and foul-smelling puddles. Luc led the way, moving like a shadow between the twisting corridors. Stay close, he hissed. The watchmaker's shop is near the Pont Neuf. If we can reach him, maybe he can undo whatever madness this is. They darted between buildings, avoiding patrols of grim-faced soldiers carrying muskets. Everywhere the city seemed alive with rage. Angry crowds shouting slogans, desperate merchants boarding up their shops, gaunt mothers clutching wailing children. At a market square, a printer hurled pamphlets into the air. The pages fluttered like wounded birds, each one emblazoned with 3 words: liberté, égalité, fraternité. Alex ducked instinctively as a rock sailed over his head, narrowly missing a soldier's helmet. "This is insane," he gasped. Tom shoved him forward. "Focus! Keep moving!" Finally, they reached a crumbling building tucked against a bridge archway. Above the battered door swung a sign depicting a cracked clock, its hands frozen at midnight. Luc rapped sharply 3 times. After a tense pause, the door creaked inward. Inside was a world entirely different from the chaos outside. Gears and springs hung from the ceiling like ornaments. Clocks of every shape and size lined the walls, their ticking filling the air with a strange rhythmic pulse. At a cluttered workbench sat an elderly man, his gnarled fingers deftly adjusting the tiny gears of a pocket watch under the glow of an oil lamp. "Monsieur Leclerc?" Marie said, stepping forward. The watchmaker looked up. His eyes, clouded with cataracts, nevertheless gleamed with uncanny awareness. "Ah," he rasped, setting aside his tools. "You've come about the game." Sarah shivered, feeling the weight of his gaze settle heavily upon her. Chapter 4: Escape and Allies. The small, cluttered shop seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat, the ticking clocks merging into a low, hypnotic drone. Dust motes swirled lazily in the beams of the oil lamp as the family gathered close. Tom kept a wary eye on the door. "If you know about the game, you better start talking. Fast." Monsieur Leclerc leaned heavily on his workbench, his face lined like ancient parchment. "You have meddled with forces you do not understand. Revolutionary Adventures is no mere diversion. It is a conduit, a binding between your world and history's volatile heart." Sarah stepped forward, clutching Lily's hand. "How do we break the binding? How do we get back?" Leclerc's fingers trembled slightly as he opened a drawer and withdrew a brass key, its surface etched with swirling, arcane symbols. "This unlocks a chest hidden among the ruins of the Bastille," he said. "Within lies a journal, the writings of the game's creator, a sorcerer obsessed with anchoring souls to turning points in history." Alex leaned closer, his forehead creased with doubt. "The Bastille was just stormed. Won't it be crawling with guards and, revolutionaries armed to the teeth?" Leclerc smiled thinly, a shadow of old mirth. "Exactly. The path to freedom is never safe." The faint sound of marching feet drifted through the cracked shutters. Luc peered through a slit in the wood, his hand drifting to the dagger at his belt. "We're out of time. National Guard patrols. They're searching house to house." Marie yanked down a tattered cloak from a hook and tossed it to Sarah. "Disguises. Quickly. If they catch you dressed like that, you'll be explaining yourselves from a cell, or worse." The family scrambled to change. Modern jackets and sneakers were hurriedly replaced with moth-eaten coats, sagging breeches, and worn shoes. Lily tucked her curls under a grimy mob cap, giggling nervously. Tom grimaced as he pulled on a rough-spun wool coat that smelled distinctly of mildew. "This better work." Luc checked his own tattered coat, then motioned toward the door. "Stay close. The Bastille's a mile northeast. Stick to the alleys and keep your heads down." They slipped into the labyrinth of the city's underbelly. The streets were a chaotic nightmare of overturned carts, flaming barricades, and graffiti-daubed walls. Angry mobs surged through squares, waving banners and makeshift weapons. Once they had to duck behind a mound of rubble as a patrol of grim-faced soldiers marched by, muskets at the ready. Sarah held her breath, clutching Lily so tightly the girl whimpered. They passed a lamppost where a severed head swayed from a rope, its mouth frozen in a scream. Alex turned pale and averted his eyes. Tom pulled him along roughly. "Focus. Eyes ahead." As they neared the massive outline of the Bastille, the fortress loomed like a dying beast against the smoky sky. Its pockmarked walls and shattered towers were swarming with citizens, tearing stones loose with bloody hands. Marie pointed toward a half-collapsed tower. There. That's where the dungeons were. The chest should be hidden in the ruins. Luke unsheathed his dagger with a steely glint in his eyes. We'll create a distraction. You four find the chest and whatever's inside. Fast. Sarah hesitated. Wait, what if... Luke thrust a battered lantern into her hands. No time. Go. With pounding hearts, the Williams family clambered over piles of rubble into the blackened shell of the Bastille. The air turned thick with the stink of gunpowder and wet stone. The faint flicker of the lantern barely pierced the darkness as they descended a spiraling stone staircase, their footsteps echoing hollowly. Alex shivered, glancing around. This feels like the start of every horror movie ever. Sarah shot him a look. Quiet, listen. In the darkness ahead, a faint, unsettling scratching noise echoed, growing louder. Lily whimpered. Rats. Lots of them. Tom swung the lantern in wide arcs, scattering dozens of red-eyed rodents back into the shadows. Keep moving. At the bottom of the stairwell, they found it, a rusted iron chest wedged into a collapsed niche. Sarah's hands shook as she inserted Leclerc's key. For a terrifying moment, it refused to turn. Then, with a loud click, the chest creaked open. Inside lay a battered, leather-bound journal, its cover scrawled with strange symbols, and an iridescent compass that pulsed faintly with its own inner light. Got it, Sarah whispered fiercely, clutching both items. A mocking voice cut through the gloom. Drop them. A tall figure stepped from the shadows. He wore a tailored coat, a tricorn hat pulled low over one eye, and in his gloved hand gleamed a cocked flintlock pistol. Jacques Renard, he said smoothly, a sneer twisting his lips. Scholar of the occult, collector of rare artifacts, and you've found my prize. Tom instinctively stepped between Renard and the rest of the family. Not a chance. Renard cocked his pistol. Hand them over, or bleed. A sharp clatter echoed behind Renard, a rock striking the stones by his foot. He whirled, firing blindly into the shadows. Luke and Marie erupted from a side tunnel, weapons drawn. Run, Marie shouted. Clutching the journal and compass, the family bolted up the crumbling stairs, the sounds of Renard's furious curses and musket shots fading behind them. Chapter 5. The Watchmaker's Warning. The family didn't stop running until the shattered walls of the Bastille were a distant, smoky silhouette against the evening sky. Breathless and mud-splattered, they collapsed against the side of a crumbling bakery, hidden from the main street. Sarah cradled the battered journal in her arms as if afraid the air itself might snatch it away. We got it, she gasped, her heart hammering wildly. We actually got it. Tom leaned heavily against the wall, wiping grime from his forehead. Yeah, but what now? We're still stuck in the middle of a revolution. Marie and Luke caught up moments later, their faces grim and streaked with sweat. Luke's blade dripped fresh blood, whether from a skirmish or merely a close encounter. Tom didn't ask. You did well, Marie said, panting. But Renard won't give up. Not now. You've humiliated him. Sarah carefully opened the journal. The pages were brittle with age, filled with dense French writing and strange circular diagrams that seemed to shimmer when looked at too long. It's a spell, she said, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. It's real. It's some kind of ritual to break the binding. Alex peered over her shoulder, frowning. What do we need? Sarah traced her finger over the list, translating aloud. 3 things, a thread from the tricolor flag, a shard from the Bastille stones, and... She hesitated, swallowing. A tear shed in true grief for liberty. A heavy silence fell. Tom straightened, setting his jaw. Well, we have a shard. He held up a rough stone he'd pocketed from the fortress ruins. Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of their task settle fully on her shoulders. We still need the other 2. And fast. Before Renard catches up. Marie tapped her fingers against her crossed arms, thinking. Tomorrow, the women march to Versailles to demand bread. The tricolor will be flown openly there. If you blend in, you might snatch a thread. Luke added grimly. But blending in won't be enough if Renard's men are looking for you. Lily, silent all this time, piped up hesitantly. The compass. It's glowing. They all turned to look. Indeed, the iridescent compass was pulsing faintly with a rhythmic light, its needles spinning lazily before snapping northward. Sarah frowned. It's pointing the way. Somehow it's tied to the game's magic. Tom took the compass and pocketed it carefully. Let's get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be ugly. They spent the night hidden in the attic of a sympathetic cobbler's shop, the floorboards sagging under their weight. Rats scrabbled in the walls, and the thin blanket Marie gave them did little to ward off the chill. Sarah lay awake, staring at the moonlight filtering through the cracks, the weight of responsibility pressing heavily on her chest. Could they really pull this off? Could they undo the nightmare they had stumbled into? Somewhere in the distance, a clock tower chimed, a reminder. Time was running out. Chapter 6. The Hunt for the Ingredients. Morning broke over Paris in a wash of gray mist and tension so thick it seemed the city itself was holding its breath. The streets teemed with restless energy, as thousands gathered for the fateful march to Versailles. From the attic's cracked window, Sarah watched the tide of people swelling below. Women with baskets, men with farming tools, children clutching ragged flags. "This is it," she whispered. "The start of something unstoppable." Tom adjusted the rough cloak he wore, grimacing as he tightened the coarse rope belt around his waist. "We just need that thread and a tier. Then we're out of here." Alex fumbled with the basket Marie had thrust into his arms, filled with bruised apples and a few stale loaves to make them look like common traders. "Can someone remind me why I'm the pack mule?" Lily giggled softly, pulling her bonnet low over her curls. "Because you're tall and grumpy, like a real Parisian." Marie, who had been scanning the square below, turned back to them. "Stay close to the marchers, blend in, and when you see the flag, move fast." The family slipped into the crowded street, merging into the ocean of angry, hungry citizens. Cries of "bread" and "justice" rang out, echoing off the stone buildings. Makeshift drums pounded a frantic rhythm, urging them forward. Up ahead, a hastily erected platform bore a revolutionary leader, a wiry man waving the brand-new tricolor flag. Its bold stripes of blue, white, and red rippled proudly against the dull sky. "There it is," Sarah hissed. Tom nodded grimly. "Wait for the right moment." They pushed closer through the crowd, jostled by shouting fishmongers and barefoot children. Sarah clutched Lily's hand tightly, feeling the rising desperation in the mob's movements. As the leader whipped the flag overhead, Sarah surged forward. In a swift, practiced motion, she flicked out her small sewing scissors hidden in her apron and snipped a loose thread trailing from the flag's hem. It fluttered down like a feather. She caught it in her palm, heart racing wildly. "Got it," she breathed. At that instant, a soldier near the platform caught sight of her. "Thief!" he bellowed, pointing. Alex didn't hesitate. He hurled an apple from the basket, striking the soldier squarely in the face. The man stumbled backward, clutching his nose. "Time to go!" Alex shouted. They barreled through the throng, ducking into a narrow alley, breathless with adrenaline and the electric thrill of survival. Sarah clutched the precious thread to her chest, laughing in disbelief. One down, one to go. The shard from the Bastille was safely tucked away. Now they needed the most elusive piece, a tear shed freely for liberty. Easier said than done. They roamed the slums near the Seine, searching for genuine grief amid the hunger and rage. Shouts and songs filled the air, but true sorrow hid in the cracks between the noise. It was Lily who spotted her first. A little girl in a torn dress, kneeling beside the limp body of an old man, her face buried in his tattered coat. "She's crying," Lily whispered. Sarah approached slowly, kneeling beside the girl. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said gently. The girl raised a tear-streaked face, confusion flickering in her eyes. "Are you an angel?" she asked in a small, broken voice. "No," Sarah said softly, her heart aching. "Just a traveler." Carefully, she caught one of the girl's falling tears in a tiny glass vial she'd carried tucked into her sash. The girl didn't resist. She simply returned to her silent grief. Sarah pressed a few coins into the girl's hand, a futile gesture, but it was all she could offer, then backed away, blinking rapidly to clear her own stinging eyes. Tom wrapped an arm around her shoulders as they retreated. "We have everything." Sarah nodded, tightening her grip on the thread, the shard, and the tear. "Now we finish this." They regrouped that night in the abandoned barn where Marie and Luke had prepared a hidden sanctuary. The rafters groaned in the wind, and the scent of damp hay filled the air. Sarah placed the 3 ingredients carefully into a battered copper bowl. The shard, the thread, the tear. By the wavering light of the lantern, she began to chant the words written in the ancient journal. The language was foreign, yet something in it thrummed through her bones, resonating deep within her mind. As she spoke, the compass lying beside the bowl began to glow with a blinding light. Its needle spun faster and faster, whirring wildly. A shimmering portal tore open in the barn's center, a swirling vortex of golden mist and distant, echoing voices. Tom grabbed Lily's hand, his knuckles white. Ready? Before they could step forward, a crash split the night. Renard, battered but very much alive, burst through the doors, pistol raised and fury burning in his eyes. "You're not going anywhere," he snarled. Luke lunged at him, blade flashing. "Go!" Marie shouted. "Now!" Without hesitation, the Williams family threw themselves into the swirling portal, and the world shattered once more. Chapter 7. Storming. The Bastille. The portal's pull was unlike anything they had ever experienced. Not like falling, not like flying. It was as if their bodies had become threads of light, stitched into the very fabric of history itself. Then, with a jarring lurch, they were hurled back into solidity. Sarah hit the ground hard, her palms scraping against rough cobblestones. Around her, the world spun shaped torches and shouting figures dancing in dizzy circles. "Everyone okay?" She gasped, trying to sit up. Tom groaned, dragging himself to his knees beside her. "I'll let you know when the world stops spinning." Alex clutched his ribs, his face pale. "Please tell me we're home." Sarah's stomach dropped as she looked around. They weren't home, not even close. They were standing once more before the towering, battered walls of the Bastille. But this time, the fortress wasn't in ruins. It was whole and guarded. Dozens of royal soldiers in gleaming uniforms lined the battlements, muskets gleaming in the torchlight. Cannon muzzles jutted menacingly from the towers, and from the growing crowd of furious citizens surging around them, the air buzzed with impending violence. "We're back," Sarah breathed. "But earlier, before the first storming." Lily pressed closer to her, her small body trembling. "Is this bad?" Tom surveyed the scene grimly. "It's very bad." Shouts erupted from the crowd, demands for the fortress's surrender, for bread, for liberty. A cannon roared in the distance, shaking the ground beneath their feet. The first charge was about to happen. Alex's eyes widened. "We need to get out of here before we're trampled." Sarah fumbled for the compass, yanking it from her coat pocket. Its needle spun wildly, unsure or unwilling to settle. Then she saw it, a faint shimmer like heat distortion near the foot of the Bastille's outer wall. "There!" she shouted. "The portal's trying to reform." But between them and that fragile doorway stood a living wall of furious revolutionaries and panicked soldiers. Tom's face hardened. "We have to fight our way through." Marie and Luke materialized at their sides, faces grim and determined. "Renard's still after you," Marie said breathlessly. "We'll cover your escape." Luck offered a thin, dangerous smile. "Go, finish it." Without waiting, Luck charged forward, shouting revolutionary slogans in perfect French. He crashed into the melee, drawing the attention of soldiers and citizens alike. Marie followed, her small form darting and weaving through the chaos, her blade flashing silver under the torches. The family ran. They shoved through the writhing mass of bodies, dodging fists, ducking under swinging musket butts, leaping over broken barrels. Sarah clutched Lily's hand so tightly her knuckles turned white. A musket ball whistled past Alex's ear. He yelped, ducking instinctively. "They're shooting at everything that moves!" "Keep going," Sarah screamed. The shimmering doorway flickered, fading, strengthening, like a heartbeat on the edge of death. Renard appeared, like a nightmare-given form, striding toward them through the chaos, his pistol raised. "You cannot escape me," he bellowed. He fired. The bullet whizzed past Tom's shoulder, tearing through his cloak. Tom snarled and threw himself forward, slamming into Renard's side. The two men crashed to the cobblestones, grappling furiously. Alex hesitated, torn. "Go!" Tom roared. "I'll catch up." Sarah grabbed Alex and dragged him toward the portal. They reached the shimmering light just as it began to collapse inward. With a desperate, final leap, they hurled themselves into the swirling vortex, Tom crashing in behind them, blood staining his sleeve. The Bastille, the screams, the smoke, all of it tore away like paper in a hurricane. Then, darkness. Chapter 8. The Fractured Leap. The darkness was absolute, soundless, weightless. Then, with a violent jolt, the world slammed back into existence. Sarah hit the ground hard, her elbow scraping rough stone as she rolled to a stop. "Everyone," she gasped, blinking against the dazzling light. "Here!" Tom grunted, pushing himself upright, his arm pressed tightly against his wounded side. Alex groaned somewhere to the left. "I think I left my stomach back there." Lily whimpered, clutching at Sarah's sleeve. They were sprawled across a wide, cobbled square lined with ornate gas lamps. Horse-drawn carriages rattled past, and elegant women in silk dresses and parasols strolled arm in arm with men in tailcoats and top hats. It took only a heartbeat for Sarah to realize something was wrong. Very wrong. This isn't home. She scrambled to her feet, scanning the bustling streets. A newsboy darted past, waving a folded paper. Alex snatched a copy from his hands, ignoring the boy's shouted protests. "What's the date?" Tom barked. Alex stared at the headline, his mouth falling open. "June 28th, 1832, Paris." 43 years later, Sarah whispered, cold dread pooling in her stomach. "We didn't go home, we went forward." Lily clutched the compass tightly. Its iridescent face pulsed again, more urgently this time, the needle swinging left toward a narrow, shaded alley. "It's pointing," Lily cried. "Maybe it knows the way." Tom hissed through his teeth as he stood, clearly favoring his left side. "Then we follow it." No arguments. The family melted into the flow of pedestrians, drawing curious glances. Their rough clothing stood out starkly against the polished elegance of Paris in 1832. They ducked into the alley the compass indicated, a narrow passageway between towering stone buildings, their windows shuttered against the summer heat. The air smelled of mildew and coal smoke. Rats scurried along the gutters. Alex wrinkled his nose. Lovely. At the alley's end, they found themselves facing a dilapidated old theater, its once grand facade now cracked and faded. A sign swung loosely above the entrance, Théâtre de la Liberté. Sarah frowned at the compass. "It's pulling us inside." Inside, the dusty scent of old velvet and wood polish filled the air. Voices echoed faintly, actors rehearsing on the stage, reciting fiery speeches about revolution. Peeking through a broken curtain, they saw a man in a crimson coat adjusting a battered prop guillotine. Alex pointed to the side of the stage. "Look! There's a trapdoor!" The compass needle quivered wildly, pointing directly at it. Moving silently, they slipped around the edge of the auditorium, ducking behind faded curtains and crumbling scenery. Beneath the trapdoor, a rickety staircase led down into a damp, cluttered cellar. Crates of old costumes and broken props lined the walls. Under a moth-eaten tarp sat another chest, identical to the one they had opened in the Bastille. Sarah's heart pounded as she knelt before it. "It's here. Whatever we're supposed to find, it's here." She lifted the lid carefully. Inside was a newer journal, its pages crammed with tight handwriting, complex diagrams of gears and clocks, and strange formulas that seemed to warp the air around them. "Renard's work," she whispered, horror rising in her chest. "He's been experimenting with time magic. This is how he chased us." A mocking laugh echoed from the staircase above. "Très bien, madame," sneered a familiar voice. "But not clever enough." Renard stood on the steps, his pistol raised, his face twisted with fury. His coat was scorched and torn, but he was very much alive and very dangerous. "You think you can cheat me?" he snarled. "The power belongs to me." Lily darted forward, yanking a strange key from the chest, a small bronze thing covered in symbols matching those on the compass. "This looks important," she cried. Renard lunged, but Tom met him halfway, slamming into his midsection. They tumbled across the cellar floor in a tangle of fists and curses. Suddenly, a voice rang out from the top of the stairs, strong, familiar, and impossibly older. "Use the key! The clock tower by the river. It's the anchor." Sarah looked up in shock. "Marie." There she stood, older, gray streaking her hair, a rifle slung casually over one shoulder. Her eyes blazed with the same fierce spirit Sarah remembered. "Go!" Marie shouted. "Before it's too late!" The family bolted from the cellar, clutching the journal, the compass, and the mysterious key. Behind them, Renard's screams echoed like a wounded beast. Ahead, the Seine shimmered under the afternoon sun, and rising above it, tall and broken but still standing, loomed the clock tower, their last, desperate hope. Chapter 9. The Clock Tower's Curse. The clock tower loomed over the Seine like a wounded giant, its cracked stone face frozen at midnight. The massive gears behind the clock face had long since rusted into silence, and ivy crawled hungrily up the tower's walls. The Williams family sprinted across the quay, weaving through clusters of street performers and carriages. The weight of the journal, the compass, and the key dragged at Sarah's arms, but she clutched them fiercely, unwilling to lose their only chance. "Almost there," she gasped. Tom's steps faltered slightly, his injured side slowing him, but he pressed on with grim determination. "Move. We don't know how long we have before Renard catches up." They reached the tower's heavy oak door bound with iron, scarred by time and countless storms. Sarah shoved the strange bronze key into the lock. For a terrifying moment, it refused to turn. Then, with a grinding screech, the mechanism yielded. The door swung inward, revealing the tower's hollowed-out belly. Gears the size of carriages hung in frozen silence, their massive teeth coated with grime and rust. Dust floated in the stale air like sleeping spirits. Lily peered inside, her small hand trembling in Sarah's. "This place feels dead." Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand reassuringly, though her own nerves sang with fear. "Time itself is broken here. We have to fix it." Alex pointed to a massive lever mounted against the central gear. "That's gotta do something, right?" Tom nodded grimly. "Everyone ready?" One by one, they nodded. Alex grasped the lever and pulled with all his strength. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then a horrible screech ripped through the tower as gears shuddered, grinding painfully against their years of decay. Slowly, the clock's massive hands began to lurch forward, inch by agonizing inch. The ground trembled beneath their feet. The very air seemed to crackle. A cold mist began to seep from the gears, swirling around them like smoke from a dying fire. Tom tensed, pulling Lily closer. "Something's happening." The mist thickened, blotting out the walls, the ceiling, even the floor. The world dissolved around them, not into darkness this time, but into a dizzying kaleidoscope of scenes. The storming of the Tuileries Palace, Napoleon's coronation, the June Rebellion. Each scene flashed and bled into the next, as if time itself were struggling to hold together. Sarah clutched the compass, feeling its desperate pulsing against her palm. The magic's unstable. We're bouncing between centuries. Out of the swirling maelstrom, a figure appeared, Renard, his face twisted in rage and desperation. "You cannot control it," he screamed. "The game consumes all who defy it." He lunged toward Sarah, his pistol raised, but before he could reach her, a violent rift tore open at his feet. Renard screamed as he was sucked backward into the whirling portal, his body spiraling toward the horrifying tableau of the Reign of Terror. His screams faded into nothingness. The vortex twisted again, hurling the Williams family forward, faster, faster, until the mist shattered into 1,000 shards of light. They tumbled through, crashing down hard, and this time, the world smelled of wet grass and earth. Sarah pushed herself up, blinking through the lingering dazzle of the portal's dying light. It's our backyard." The familiar shape of their cottage rose before them, battered by rain, but beautifully, wonderfully real. Lily clutched her tightly, sobbing in relief. "We're home, Mom. We're really home." Tom fell to his knees, laughing brokenly, tears streaming down his face. I never thought we'd see it again." Alex collapsed onto the damp grass, staring up at the cloudy sky. Best sight ever. For a long moment, none of them moved, savoring the miracle of their return. Then Sarah's gaze fell upon the battered board game, still lying open on their porch. It looked utterly harmless now, faded, powerless. But Chapter 10, Racing Against Time. Rain drizzled steadily over the Williams' backyard, soaking the grass, the flower beds, and the battered box of revolutionary adventures that lay forgotten near the porch steps. The portal's final shimmering traces faded into the gray afternoon. Sarah stood motionless, staring at the game board as the realization sank in. "The journal," she whispered. "The soul's trapped. Marie, look." Tom, grimacing as he pressed a hand to his injured side, followed her gaze. "They're still out there, aren't they?" "If we destroy the game," Sarah said, her voice cracking, "we might destroy them too." Lily clutched her damp sleeves, her big eyes wide with worry. "But if we don't, it could pull someone else in, hurt more people." Alex sat cross-legged in the wet grass, the compass still glowing faintly in his lap. "There's gotta be another way. Some way to, I don't know, set them free without wrecking everything." The journal, now battered and soaked, slipped from Sarah's hand and landed open on a muddy patch. A faded scrap of parchment fluttered free, catching on the breeze before sticking to the side of the porch. Sarah retrieved it, smoothing the sodden paper carefully. In the unmistakable handwriting of Marie, it read, "Time bends, but bonds endure. Survive and live fiercely, M." She knew, Sarah murmured. She understood we might have to leave. Tom crouched beside her, reading the words over her shoulder. She's telling us to live, to go forward. For a long moment, the family stood in the rain, weighing their past and their future. Then Sarah squared her shoulders. "We keep it," she said firmly. "We protect it, hide it if we must. But we don't destroy it," Tom nodded. "And if anyone else ever finds it, we warn them." Alex grinned weakly. "Maybe with a big sign that says, 'Do not touch seriously.'" "And we remember," Lily said solemnly. "We remember them." Sarah wrapped the game carefully in oilcloth and tucked it into an old cedar chest they kept in the shed, one that required a key only she and Tom knew about. As she locked the chest and slid it into the far corner, hidden among garden tools and old furniture, she felt the compass in her pocket give one final, faint pulse, as if acknowledging the choice. That night, they sat around the fireplace, wrapped in warm blankets, sipping tea sweetened with too much honey. Lily traced the strange compass symbols again and again on a scrap of paper. "Do you think they're still out there?" she asked softly. "Marie and Luck?" Tom reached over and ruffled her damp curls. "I think some revolutions never end." Outside, the rain finally stopped, and somewhere, perhaps in another time, another world, a broken clock tower began to chime. Chapter 11. Home, but not home. In the days that followed, life at the Williams cottage slowly returned to a rhythm that almost felt normal. The rain gave way to bright, brisk mornings. The fireplace crackled each evening, warm against the early autumn chill. Yet underneath it all, an invisible thread bound the family together tighter than ever before. A thread woven through shared danger, loss, and an unspoken understanding. Sarah stood at the kitchen sink one morning, scrubbing dishes absently as she stared out the window. Outside, Lily played near the flower beds, her giggles floating on the wind. Tom was busy repairing the sagging porch steps, and Alex lounged under the old oak tree, scribbling in a battered notebook. 43 years, Sarah murmured under her breath. "It was only a few days for us, but we touched decades." A movement at the corner of her vision caught her eye. On the windowsill sat the compass, once iridescent face now dull. Yet as she watched, the needle gave a tiny, almost playful twitch, pointing north, then east, then settling once more. Sarah wiped her hands on a towel and crossed the room, lifting the compass gently. It was like holding a heartbeat in her palm, faint, stubborn, undeniable. "You're still alive, aren't you?" she whispered. She tucked it carefully into the cedar chest along with the game, locking them both away once more. Outside, the world moved on. New headlines filled newspapers. Cars roared past on the nearby country road. Neighbors waved and smiled, oblivious to how thin the line between ordinary and extraordinary had become. That night, as Tom set another log on the fire, he glanced over at Sarah. "Do you ever wonder," he said softly, "what would have happened if we stayed? If we'd chosen to live in that time?" Sarah smiled faintly, her mind drifting back to the smell of bread baking in crowded alleys, to the wild songs of freedom rising through the Paris streets, to the fierce hope in Marie's eyes. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But this," she gestured to the cozy room, the photographs on the mantel, the muddy boots by the door, Lily's crayon drawings tacked crookedly to the wall. "This is where we belong." Alex looked up from his sketchbook, grinning. "Plus indoor plumbing. Let's not underestimate that." Laughter rippled through the room, light and easy. Yet when Sarah turned out the lights that night and tucked Lily into bed, she lingered at the window. In the distance, the stars shimmered like distant lighthouses, and somewhere, maybe just beyond the veil of time, she imagined Marie and Luke standing beneath those same stars, smiling fiercely, living fiercely, just as they had promised. A single tear slipped down Sarah's left cheek, not of sorrow, but of gratitude. Some journeys never truly ended. They lived on, stitched into the heartbeat of history itself. Chapter 12. The Final Choice. The next morning dawned crisp and clear. The storm clouds of the past week finally swept away. The Williams family gathered around the kitchen table, the soft clink of spoons stirring oatmeal filling the cozy room. Yet an unspoken tension hummed beneath the surface, like a distant drumbeat growing louder. On the table between them sat the cedar chest. Inside, locked and sealed, lay revolutionary adventures and the compass, their magic slumbering but not dead. Tom leaned back in his chair, cradling a mug of coffee between his hands. "We could throw it in the river," he said thoughtfully. "Let it sink. Let it disappear forever." Alex tapped his spoon against the bowl, frowning. "What if it washes up somewhere? What if it finds someone else?" Lily hugged her knees to her chest, her voice very small. "I don't want anyone else to get stuck." Sarah rested her hand gently on the chest's worn lid. "It's not just a game," she said. "It's a doorway, a responsibility." They sat in silence, the weight of the decision pressing down on them all. Finally, Tom spoke. "We keep it safe. We protect it. We watch over it." Alex nodded slowly. "And if someday it's needed, we'll know." Lily's eyes brightened, her face solemn with understanding. "Like guardians." Sarah smiled at her, pride and sorrow mixing in her chest. "Exactly." That afternoon, they carried the cedar chest deep into the woods behind the cottage, to a hollowed oak tree they had discovered years earlier during family hikes. Together, they buried it beneath the roots, wrapped in layers of cloth and memories, protected by the earth itself. As Tom packed the last shovelful of dirt over the chest, Sarah placed her hand over the mound. "Thank you," she whispered to Marie, to Luke, to all those forgotten souls who had fought, hoped, dreamed. Then they walked home together, hand in hand, the golden afternoon stretching long and peaceful before them. Behind them, unseen by human eyes, the old oak's branches shivered in the breeze, and for a heartbeat, the faint toll of a distant clock tower echoed across the hills. Adventure was never truly over. It simply waited, patient, timeless, for those brave enough to listen. The end. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe.